Welcome to another week of Dan Really Likes Wine. Winter is almost at an end, spring is nearly upon us, and that means white wine time as the sunshine opens up again across South Africa. Now, it might not be hot enough for your normal glass of sauvignon blanc in the middle of the day, and so what hits the middle of the road? Well, for me, a Chenin blanc. And I was reminded once again of the quality of our Chenin. Drinking a Chenin you've probably never heard of, the Cape Root Chenin that I found at a bar in New York a few weeks ago. It was a pleasant enough Chenin, not the very best, and thinking of that, I was reminded of some of the very best, and I think I have got 4 of them here this week, starting with wine from Deathlefs, which is the second oldest estate still owned by the same family in South Africa. So plenty of history, plenty of pedigree, and plenty of very nice wine. So I got my collection of Deatlefs. The first time I'd really tasted it properly from my friend Darielle, who looks after the Cape Wine Auction. She very kindly sent a whole pile of wine up as a little token of gratitude for being involved in the auction. And there was a rather large consignment of Deatlefs in this Chenin Blanc. And I drank the first bottle a little hesitantly because Chenin Blanc can be magnificent, but it can also render you unmovable for 3 days with a blinding headache. This was certainly in the former category when I tried it for the first time. A really nice, simple Chenin Blanc with a nice big mouth and a wine that's a nice sort of entry-level point into Chenin Blanc. So it was great the first time I tried it out of Breathtakingly. It's been great several times since. I suspect that will continue today. Quite a sharp, fresh nose, some ripe apples in there, and nice soft colour. I quite like the bottle, the green and the colour of the Chenin playing off. It's a little old school, which is not inappropriate for an estate that's been around quite as long as Deatlefs. And that's very pleasant. It's not an overcomplicated wine. It's a very simple version of the Chenin Blanc grape, done nicely, not massively expensive, really good, middle of the week, drinking Chenin Blanc. And I think Deatlefs have got a really nice example of it here. Not overly ripe, but there is a good bit of fruit in there. Sits nicely on the palate, nice and smooth, nice and fresh, and a good start to our week of Chenin Blanc. Then on to the name synonymous with Chenin Blanc in South Africa, Ken Forrester. We've had the FMC before on the show, the top of the range. This a little further down the pecking order, but still a wonderful example of the grape. It's an old vine reserve, old vines being seen more and more in South Africa, people discovering the joys of grapes and of vineyards that have been around for decades and longer. And these grapes come from some particularly old vines at Ken Forrester. They're also part of a process that is very hands-on. Naturally, the grapes picked by hand, but also the ground tilled entirely. It's a little more labour-intensive, but it means that Ken Forrester and team are providing more employment, and that's no bad thing in South Africa. So what of the wine? Well, the FMC was absolutely superb. This at 100 Rand a bottle or thereabouts is middle of the road price. It's still not inexpensive, but I think it might turn out to be as good a value bottle of Chenin Blanc as there is in South Africa. Honeyed feel, the very gentle honey feel of Chenin, offset by the sort of the deeper grapefruit, a little bit of apricot. Just a nice, big, strong Chenin Blanc. A lot of different flavours, and a wine that, like a lot of Chenin Blanc, probably could do with another few years. This is 2016, so it's a year old or thereabouts, very much in its Chenin Blanc infancy, drinking delightfully now, but well worth 2 or 3 years of setting aside and hanging on to and seeing what develops, which I think will be something special indeed. But already as it is, a terrific example of Chenin, and another good reason why Mr. Forrester is so celebrated with this particular grape. Then on to Maison Estate, we featured on the show before. Tried the Syrah when we had a look at wines of Franschhoek a few months back. I really liked the Syrah. I was also very fond of the Chenin when I tried it at the estate in Franschhoek, which I visited ostensibly for the food. The restaurant at Maison is in the top 10 in the Eat Out rankings at the moment. Superb food, brilliant chef, lovely unorthodox creative meals, and a delightful setting. But it turned out that the wine was every bit as good as the location and the cuisine. I was there with a couple of people who certainly know their wine, Michael Jordan, the owner of Bartony, and the man who convinced me to start Dan Really Likes Wine. He's currently bringing data and internet more cheaply to South Africa to enable you to download movies from Amsterdam in a fraction of the time. Douglas Oberwortmann-Hausenfontein, the American nightclub owner with a mouthful of a name. Cameron van der Berg was out there as well. My wife, who's certainly fond of her wine. And we all agreed that the wine at Maison was exceptional, and there's a fair bit I ordered, a bit of the Syrah, but also this Chenin Blanc. It's a wine they don't make in huge quantities, I think 10 barrels or thereabouts, but what they lack in quantity, they certainly make up for in quality. Well, that is shamelessly rich on the nose and equally so on the palate. That's a luxurious wine. There's a Turkish delight feel to that. It's smooth, very, very creamy, vanilla'd finish. It's almost Chenin masquerading as dessert wine without the sweetness or the thickness, if that makes much sense. It's a really lovely wine. It explains why it went so well with the array of food and why we ordered quite so many bottles of it when we were at Maison. Go for the food, certainly. The restaurant is outstanding, but order the wine, try the Shiraz, try the Chardonnay. Certainly don't miss the Chenin Blanc. And then on to one of my favourite discoveries of 2017. As you can see, it's a wine that needs to be undressed, which generally suggests that the winemaker or the estate believe it is wine of a higher end nature, and in this case I'm certainly not going to disagree. It's a wine I discovered on my epic wine route earlier this year, a little estate called Beaumont in Botreffer. I think they call the wine of origin Walker Bay, but it's just in that Botreffer area, and it's an unassuming little spot. It's quiet, it's very picturesque, great spot to drop in on. It looks pleasant, but it doesn't prepare you for some of the wine you're going to get, and especially this, the Hope Marguerite Chenin Blanc. And the Beaumont wines are currently made by Sebastian, following the footsteps of his dad Raoul, and that family tradition extends to the name of this wine. Hope Marguerite was a grandmother in the family, going back a couple of generations, and I think she'd be really proud of this. It's a barrel-matured Chenin that's got a 5-star rating from Platter on a regular basis. This is not inexpensive wine. You're going to pay 270 Rand a bottle for this at the cellar, a bit more anywhere else, and double or triple that if you find it at a restaurant. So how can you justify charging 270 Rand for a bottle of Chenin Blanc? By making it absolutely exceptional. And it really is absolutely exceptional. I tried it for the first time when I was at the estate, and I hadn't had a look at the price, so I took to it quite neutrally, and every time I've had it since, I've just been captivated by what they've produced here. Chenin Blanc has become something that Beaumont is now famous for, that they've made with great success, and really understood how to get the best out of both their grapes and the process that they're using. And the result is a Chenin Blanc that's got quite a citrusy feel to it. There's a bit of a tang to it, but there's a great depth. There's a wonderfully full flavour. It's a wine that lingers on the palate, and a wine that's going to do great justice to a meal, something that's really rich, something that's really strong, fresh lobster taken out of the water. This would be a marvellous companion. Not inexpensive, not something you're going to be drinking on a regular basis, but when you do, whatever you're celebrating will be celebrated very well indeed, because this is Chenin Blanc at its very, very finest. So as we head into spring, load up on some Chenin. It's a great example of wine to be drinking at this particular time of year, whether it's something a little more entry level, the Deathlefs, the Old Vine from Ken Forrester at the Maison, and I'd really advise you try and get there to the restaurant and buy some wine while you're there, or this expensive but quite beautiful Hope Marguerite from Beaumont. 4 terrific examples and 4 reminders that South African Chenin Blanc really is fantastic. Cheers.